The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome to Old Space Show. I'm Brandon, and riding shotgun with me is Tony Schaab.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be back yet again. All right, let's do it.
one series off, one series on. One series off, one series
I'll
on.
take it. We're getting into a nice little routine
There
here.
we go.
So
There we go. You get a break. You get a break. This series of Old Space Show will follow the exploits of a man and his car. The first season of Knight Rider, which turned 40 this year. Tony, let's talk Knight Rider up top here.
Yes. Yeah, I'm excited. This is one of those shows that, like, when it started, it was like outlandish in its premise, right? Like, oh, a car that has a computer in it,
It can
talks
talk
back to you, and and now 40 years later, you're like, this is it. But it's still, I feel like it holds up really well. Like, it's really,
right.
It was fun to rewatch recently. Like, a lot of times when I go back and watch these older space shows, I'm like, ooh, this is not how I remember it when I was growing up. But this one was just as I was just as engaged. I really had a lot of fun. It moved very smoothly.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't feel at all like I was like, oh, this is not aged well. Like, the premise may not have aged well, but the action and adventure
Right.
I felt was just as engaging. I was excited to rewatch it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like, this is a show. Like a talking car, that's it. Like, oh well, it was cool back then. Like, I remember I told my son about this show one time because I was a big fan as a kid, and he's like, what's the car do? That's I'm like, it talked. He's like, yeah. I'm
and
like, yeah. But yeah, so this is a show that I got a gigantic fan of as a kid, apparently, and I've never fully committed to going back and like I've caught like a rerun or two. I watched it apparently. I was born in '82, so there's no way in hell I was watching this then. But I probably in like season 3 or 4 or something, I was watching it a bunch. For example, I still have this genuine article, Michael Knight action figure. I don't have the car though, but I still have this sucker. One of the things was, I always tell the story, my family, my mom and dad, I loved Knight Rider, a kit. They had a car show up in Fort Wayne at the Coliseum, and Kit was the main attraction for that. So like, oh, we'll take him to go see it, get his picture in the car. The picture of me in that car does not exist because apparently I had a meltdown.
Oh no.
When I got to the car and they couldn't get me settled down enough, and no picture.
Oh man.
Me inside KITT. So
what a bummer.
Very big bummer. But it's a show that I've always just had this fondness for. And then, like, I know David Hasselhoff to so many people is Baywatch and kind of the jokey meme he was like meme culture before meme culture, when people started finding some old things about him on the internet, like old model pictures and things like that. For me, he's Knight Rider, and then second, Star Crash, one of the ultimate Star Wars exploitation movies with Carolyn Monroe. But like, before this, he had that movie Star Crash. He did a couple of Love Boats, the semi-tough TV series based on the movie, and then he played Boner in a movie called Revenge of the Cheerleaders.
Classy. Well, I've always thought that you can tell. I mean, it's not a perfect indicator, but you can use the quality of stars in a show in terms of what they go on to do,
right,
to really gauge like how quality their first shows were. So you have a show here that essentially has, what people would probably know as Baywatch Boy and the voice of Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets
Right,
World, but you
yes.
got them together in a show before all that happened, and they were
Exactly.
still killing it, and it's like a beautiful thing. So
It was a popular show, and I think people don't realize with Hasselhoff, probably not now with the younger people and things that might go who, but the guy was super popular in the United States. Knight Rider put him on the map. Handsome guy, fun actor. Show was cool, and then he had Baywatch, which set him like it was, people laughed about it here in the United States, but that show was a phenomenal, is the number one watch show in the world.
yeah,
He also had a musical career, and outside of the United States, he was gigantic in that regard.
sure.
And my friend Alex, she was born in Germany, and it was and she grew up like David Hasselhoff, the pop star. And she came when they came to America, I was like, people don't have the David Hasselhoff albums here. Like seriously, it's just that different outside the US. There's so always Franco Nero, one of the most biggest stars ever in the world, but not in the US. So we don't
Right.
we don't know him as well. But yeah, Hasselhoff, this is his ascension. Like this and Baywatch will blast him off big time. And he never had movies. He's like one of the biggest TV stars ever. But
yeah,
he's in such a small window that it didn't last. So
yeah, but I mean, it's interesting though. Like I said, to go back and rewatch it, like he is. Right now, it's very easy to make fun and kind of go into the meme culture thing, but he's very enigmatic in this series. Like he was kind of born to be this kind of leading man, and I think it was the perfect storm of him coming on at the right time, and this premise that seems so commonplace and mundane now, but 40 years ago was like wild. Like no one had taken, like, let's make a car intelligent and have an inanimate object be essentially the co-star. That's kind of what Glenn Larson was very good at, when he did Battlestar Galactica with the Cylons. Obviously they're the bad guys, but you got, Buck Rogers with Tweaky and the robots and things like that. Like he was very good at taking inanimate things and making you care about them. And Kit was like one of the iconic cars of the 80s, right up there with the DeLorean. And I mean, it was a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Kit was one of the top cars of all time in television and film, for sure. And one thing I love too, with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, there's such a good, genuine touch on that movie to use David Hasselhoff as the popular person for Star-Lord, because it's not a hindsight thing. Because there's a lot of things people will do in hindsight for shows and stuff that reflect upon a different era of something that had a cult popularity that didn't peak till later, but people act like it happened then. Knight Rider, David Hasselhoff, perfect. Because there's one of the things I've always complained about. And let me preface, I love Stranger Things, enjoy that show, but that first season, the kid has a The Thing poster in his room. No kid had a The Thing poster. That movie bombed. Like there's a lot of stuff that's like, okay, that's popular now from the 80s, but back then I don't think a kid was having in Indiana. Small town Indiana,
right? In Indiana, of all places, right? Yeah, throw a Bob Knight poster up there or something. Like, let's make it relevant here. So,
right. Like that wouldn't have been the movie poster he had in his room in like '83. I'm like, I don't think the stores would have sold you that. They're like, get that shit out of here.
Right, you're 100% right.
But yeah, the Hasselhoff touch in Volume 2 of Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm like, that's a good, that really helps an authenticity come with the Star-Lord character that I liked a lot. But
100%.
Yeah, so that's kind of the background of the show. I also, you were mentioning too, like some of the enjoyment of watching these, the production value on this is really impressive. Or maybe they're just picking good directors or something, because this show feels big. And and like for TV of this time, watching that, we did like Quantum Leap. Quantum Leap never felt this large. Like this has some really big, maybe it's the lenses they're using or something, but the coverage here in like chases, action, it feels like it would project on a big screen pretty well for a TV show from the 80s.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the action is very solid. I think, like you said, that can probably be attributed to just having a great team working towards it. And again, going back to the general badassery of the car, like Kit is beautiful, and just seeing him, kind of drive around and move corners, whether Hasselhoff is behind the wheel, or his stunt double, I guess. So,
Yeah.
but it's also very fun too. Like if you want to like dive in and nitpick, it's very fun to like. There was a scene in our opening Night of the Phoenix where the car Kit was driving itself up to Hasselhoff. I think he was coming out of a phone booth or something, and Kit drove himself up.
Right.
And if you look real closely, you can see the stunt driver who was dressed as the car seat.
Yes.
With his hands on the wheel. And I'm like, oh, that was such a genius thing. It looks so chintzy now, but that's so smart because they don't have a self-driving car 40 years ago. They got to figure it out somehow. So
well,
yeah,
it was never meant to be seen with the clarity we have now either. This was
You're right.
broadcast on cathode ray TV, maybe probably not cable. It's like 80. We're in 82 here, and someone like getting their antenna good. Like you're not going to notice that stuff. Now you do. Now
You're right. Yeah. We've got 1080p. They probably had 12p max, like it was, not great, but yeah. So it's fun to see that stuff, but it's also really unique. It just blends into that unique value of the show. Like they had to do something that had never been done at that time. Like how the heck are we going to do this? And they just figured it out. Like Kit is designed to be indestructible. I can't imagine how many kits they went through.
Oh, gosh,
every time the dang thing got a ding or a dent, they're like, well, that blows the whole premise of this indestructible car. So let's swap it out. So Pontiac must have supplied them with many Trans Ams throughout the course of the show. So
right. Yeah. Pray for bottle episodes. Like that's what they had to do with the budget there, the kit budget. So anyways, let's get right into this. Today we're going to discuss the very first episode, Night with a K of the Phoenix, which you could be Night of the Phoenix itself or part 1 and part 2.
That's right.
Tony, hit us with the synopsis.
All right. A detective believed to have been killed is given a new face and identity and is armed with an artificially intelligent supercar.
All right. This is directed by Daniel Haller, a guy who got his start as an art director on Roger Corman horror movies like Little Shop of Horrors, Tower of London, Tombs of Lygia. Written by Glenn Larson, who we back to Holler real quick. Also directed stuff like Fall Guy, Buck Rogers, Battlestar Galactica, Charlie's Angels, Kojak. Got it down. Larson, we mentioned, created Battlestar. Created this. He did created Battlestar Galactica. Did Magnum PI, Fall Guy, Automan, Quincy, Buck Rogers, Manimal. Love all that stuff. But stars: David Hasselhoff, Edward Mulhare, Phyllis Davis, Pamela Susan Shoop. Get to her later. Lance Legault, Michael D. Roberts, Sean Ora Angerman, Vince Edwards, and William Daniels as the voice of Kit with 2 T's. K-I-T-T. The Edward Mulhare guy, he'll be our co-star with Hasselhoff through this. He has a career in TV. There's a show he was a regular on called The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. Tony, that's a favorite of yours, right? No?
Oh, of course, 100%.
Also a guest star for both these. Phyllis Davis. She was in Magnum PI, Love Boat, but I love that she starred in an Andy Serkis movie, Guns. So have you seen any Andy Serkis movies?
I have not.
Oh God, this guy's great. He in the 80s and 90s, what he did was like he lived in Hawaii, I think, and he made action movies, like ridiculous action movies, lots of explosions with like Penthouse Pets and Playboy Playmates as the stars, and then people like random people would show up, like Eric Estrada's in like 2 of them. But they're Hard Ticket to Hawaii is probably the best one to get everything out of what you would get from them movies, because I mean they're a good time. They're
sounds
funny,
classy as hell, and yeah, who would have thought that he'd go on to play Gollum? So
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Different Andy Serkis, obviously.
I'm sorry. Andy Sedaris. Sorry, I said
okay.
Serkis.
I was like, Andy Serkis. Okay,
no,
good for
sorry.
him.
Sedaris. Wow, folks, don't go looking up Andy Serkis Playmate. No, Andy Sedaris. Yeah, sorry. Wow.
Right on. No, you're good. I'm glad we got the clarification. We're good.
Right. And of course, whenever you start Knight Rider, you get that badass theme.
What a great what a great theme song. It was like the perfect storm of like unique idea, the theme song, the car, the action, and the acting. It was like it all came together. Yeah, no one will ever forget that theme song. It's
You can
just
play
it
it in
is
the
iconic.
club and people will get down to it. Like it is that cool.
Absolutely.
If you play it in the car, you'll probably drive a little faster. It's
Oh, 100%.
so good.
100%.
Timbaland and Magoo and then Busta Rhymes used it as they sampled it for songs, and I'm sure many
That's
many
awesome.
others have, but those were two of the notable 90s ones that used the music. But
Well, I remember in high school thinking heavily about like my first cars and stuff. I was like, how can I trick my cars out, but not be too crazy, because I was obviously a nerd and stuff. And like one of the things was like you could get your LED front, the red light like kit
yes,
along the front. It's like
running
that would
back
be
and forth.
badass. Why wouldn't I want that? So, and what an interesting way for Glenn Larson, whether it was intentional or not, like especially in Night of the Phoenix, when Kit turns on for the first time and you see the red, it's got that little noise, a little woo. It's like it sounds and looks like a Cylon from Battlestar Galactica. I was like, that is true. Be intentional. Has to be, because it is very close.
Yeah. I mean, it's a way to communicate that he's speaking.
Right.
I'm calling Kit a he because it's William Daniels' voice, but
of course, sure.
Kit's probably just an it. ITT.
Yeah. It's an interesting juxtaposition, because traditionally, like, your vehicles are traditionally considered female and things like that, but Kit was seemed to be gendered. It was like, this is like a new age buddy cop type of show with Hasselhoff and Kit, but it's the joke is that obviously one's inanimate and the other one's Kit, so you got that going for you. So.
Oh, that's good. So this episode opens up, the first act here is some spy espionage type stuff with Michael, played by a different guy, and there's some double crossing going on and all. But in the end, Michael thinks he's helping out in a situation in which he is, double crossed himself, and he gets shot in the face.
Oops.
But he survives.
But fortunately, there's an out there, which is super helpful for him. So, metal plate in the head from Nam.
Metal plate in the head from Vietnam. Lucked out. He's in there, but his face is gonna have to go. They can't recreate it. So, like, a lot of this in terms of first episode or first half of the movie, is a lot of rehab and introduction to Michael and then Kit after a bit. But there's like this old man named Wilton Knight with a K, who's like dying, and like they fix Michael's face. He's unrecognizable to, I guess, anybody. And it's a whole lot of, like, he finds the car and they go joyriding. It's a whole lot of setup, Tony.
It is. It really is. And
background.
It's so interesting too, because like you already have, again, you have the premise that at the time was very unique, like a talking intelligent car. Like you already have the hook to draw viewers in. But wait, let's go ahead and shoot our main victim in the face and give him a whole new identity. Like, just for the heck of it, it was such. I mean, I understand why they did it, because it sets up Michael Knight, formerly Michael Long, before his surgery and things like that. It sets him up to be like this off the grid kind of do-gooder guy.
The Incredible Hulk type premise, going town to town. Yeah, nobody knows who you are.
It was such a strange thing to have so early. And like, it was okay, because initially when Michael Long played uncredited by Larry Anderson, but his voice was dubbed as Hasselhoff was the voice from the get-go. So it had right away they actually did really good on the dubbing. I really couldn't tell. I was like, is that Hasselhoff? Is that this other guy? But then once they leave, so the action starts in a casino in Vegas, and then they drive off the strip out into the desert. When they get into the desert and Michael Long gets out of the car, his face is in shadow. So they've already at that point switched to Hasselhoff, but they won't show him until he gets shot a few minutes later.
Right.
Because they've already, they're done with this Larry Anderson fella, I guess, totally uncredited, which was planned because he wasn't going to be speaking or anything. But it was such an interesting way. It's like, how much crap can we throw at the viewer in the first 20, 30 minutes of this made for TV film? Like, Larson wanted to go big on this special presentation. and be like, these are all the reasons why you want this badass of a film to turn into a show, because look at all the crap we're doing.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny that the choice, I thought it was really odd, the choice to keep him in. Maybe there was like a reshoot or something and they couldn't get the guy back. But like the Hasselhoff and the Shadows thing is, well, you know what? They saved money on not traveling and bringing that guy in for a shoot. But it's weird that they go with that, or not just like, maybe just like film him from the back and mysteriously, but
Yeah.
they really want to show that guy's face and then go, yeah, we're just gonna stick this guy in the shadows. Like,
yes, he was very intentionally, like, you could tell, like, you could see the feathered hair and his jacket and everything, but his face was straight, like, dark. Like, they like very intentionally worked to get those shadows so you could see nothing about this man's face. So
right.
It was a bold choice.
Choice it was. But yeah, they Wilton Knight guy, so they're at this place and he explains to him, like, one man can make a difference. You are gonna be that man. Like,
it's very Batman, even with the last name Knight, and it's a very Batman, like, cape, like, crusader in the shadows type of vibe.
Yeah, it's like Batman. Yeah, the Batman Beyond thing, but with knights. And Michael's like, I'd like to promise you I could take on the world, but I can't. I still wake up in the middle of the night shaking. and then he goes like, the Wilton Knight is like, my adventure has ended. Yours has just begun. And it's like this humorous scene of like, no, I get the last line. They keep trying to one up each other with like,
yes, who has the most trauma here? Yes,
the adventure has begun lines. Like, this is like, and it's like, oh then Michael had, okay, oh no, he's gonna do another one. Oh, it's probably not as exaggerated as I'm saying, but it was really funny to me how they kept like going with this one-upsmanship of like, okay, die, man, but I have to say the last line before I die. But we have a company we have to know, Flag, which is Foundation for Law and Government. That's Devin Miles. This is going to be the breaker guy for Michael, the guy who sets him upon his journeys and is a human for him to interact with week to week rather than just Kit. But yeah, Michael Long dead, now Michael Knight. And he says the line to when he gets Kit, he's like, I can't believe this, a car that talks back to me. It's like, yeah, that's what we all felt back then.
Yep. Who knew? So, and it was interesting that they didn't make, I felt like they didn't make a huge deal out of this, because Kit was, if I'm not mistaken, I believe from my rewatch rather, it was solidified that Kit is Michael Long's original car, but while he was rehabbing, the Wilton and them, they are the ones that took the car. And because there's a quick, it's a very quick throwaway line when Michael sees it. He's like, I'm taking my car and getting out of here. And then Wilton's like, well, we've done some things and that's now the most advanced car in the world. And he just hops in like, he just accepts it. He's like, oh, okay, well, you tricked out my car, I guess. This is, thanks for pimping my ride. But yeah, so I don't understand why they didn't make a bigger deal out of that, because Kit was, as far as I can understand, was his car, just with the personality put into it. Which if someone threw a personality into my car, I'd be very interested in several things about it, not just the personality aspect of it. So
no, fair enough. Yeah, that would make more of the attachment thing and why Michael. Yeah, that's kind of weird. They threw it away.
Yeah, they didn't highlight it hardly at all. Yeah, because you feel like, well, this is like I bought you, I drove you off the lot. Like I would feel like there'd be a lot more of that. Like you were my property and now you're my friend. So feels weird. Like maybe they didn't want to go down that psychological road. I don't know.
They choose to focus on Wilton Knight, who he just met, and making them have like a thing that. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I was like, this episode had like big songs in it.
It's an amazing soundtrack. Like clearly they spent a lot of money on the soundtrack. It was a great vibe for the show. Again, Larson obviously went big on this one. Was like, listen,
I was surprised. Like,
this is going serious. So.
Yeah, taking it easy. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow, Fleetwood Mac. I was just like, what? And they're the actual songs. They're not like Muzak or
No, yeah, hit me with your best shot was
Yeah,
on
him,
there.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
there was a James Taylor's a JT song in there. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
they went big on
Big,
it.
yeah, that's
So
big. And I guess it's different back in the day. Musical rights and stuff were easier to sell on TV because there was no like there was no home video sales that needed to account for, just
sure.
syndication. But yeah, it's just stunning to hear so much. One would be like okay, but like it's loaded. Yeah, we kind of mess around with Michael. He gets pulled over, and he has to act like he's deaf. A little bit of a comedic bit going on. He's like,
Yeah, it was relatively light, which is good because that, especially for the time and age, it could have went in a whole different, really sad direction, and they
right.
fortunately did not go that deep with it. Thank goodness.
No,
So
thank goodness. Thank goodness. That was fine. He's like, why do I get the feeling this isn't going to be the last time I run into trouble in this town? He also tells Kit that he's about as much fun as a divorce. So I think what the idea here is Michael's going to a small town to investigate a company where these bad people that did wrong to him are based out of. I believe that's the kind of the mission here. And before our episode ends, he befriends a server played by Pamela Susan Shoop.
yep.
Who the only thing I know her from other than this is Halloween 2.
That's right. Yeah.
Where she shows what talent she has, and she has one of my favorite deaths in any of the Halloween movies. Is when she's in the hospital jacuzzi bath thing, and Michael turns it up really hot and scalds her. He drowns her and scalds her face, and the makeup work on that is incredible.
Of course, yes.
But she was also a Knight Rider, so
yeah. And interestingly, she was in the credits, both in the early credits and the rolling credits at the end. I believe she was also uncredited, not like intentionally. They just didn't think her part was big enough, and that very clearly establishes like the precedent for like the attractive lady of the week type of vibe that Michael's gonna meet him and love him and leave him type of thing. And it was clear she wasn't going to be made a permanent piece of the ongoing series,
right.
Because
the single mom not going to cut it.
Again, for the time, it seemed like a very different, like, oh, single mom, dad is gone. Dad died, of course, but dad's gone. The mom's there with the kid. Michael meets the kid. They're having a good time. Like, these are, again, things 40 years later, very commonplace, obviously. But back in the 80s, it's like single mom. She lets him meet the child right away. Like, if I had pearls, I need to clutch them. I don't understand what's happening here. So,
yeah, it's very interesting. His first lady of the week, as a single mom. But they befriend so well, like you said, that he takes her to a race where the Tanya woman, the blonde woman who shot him in the face, is working, and he's wavering Kit as a offer before these people, if he can race, show them how good he is. But the race gives us some chance to watch Kit stuff like slick driving going on, a smoke screen, a lot of stunts. Like granted, this is a super pilot. Like they will put money into big things like Lost. That's a big pilot. Money gets thrown into it. That won't be every week, but to kick it off, they will put money into these things. So
sure, yeah.
This stunt scene, or this race, is where it's at.
It was really cool to watch. Like it just felt very in line with the production value. It was a great way for them. It didn't feel like, sometimes when you're trying to like highlight the uniqueness of your show or whatever, it feels very shoehorned in when you're trying to do that. And this felt relatively organic in terms of the plot and moving the story along. Again, I was engaged, in my rewatch. I was just as engaged as I felt like I was back in the 80s. Like nothing had like fell out for me in terms of like, God, this is boring. Why did they, this is so old and dated. It felt very, still very intriguing and relevant. So yeah, I dug it for sure.
It almost feels a lot too, where like some of the more like independent action movies were in the 70s, even. Like this feels like it could have been a crappy, like, I'm saying not to call this crappy, but like a crappy 70s action movie. Like it's got that good of production values for a television show of its time.
Sure.
Even it's better than probably those as well. But I mean, it's got good lighting, it's got good coverage, good editing. The geography is great. You really know where everything's at the time. But Michael, he does win the race, and
Yes.
they find out he doesn't exist.
Dun dun dun.
Right.
I mean, everything, not only just the credit cards in his wallet, like they eventually come up with a relatively thin where they're like, we fingerprinted him, whatever. And even his fingerprints were altered, which
Right.
good for Wilton and his squad for going all in on a guy
They
who
thought
had a
it
busted
up.
up face.
Yeah.
Like, let's burn off his fingerprints and give him new ones. What the hell? So
He's in a coma. No matter.
yeah, he won't feel a thing.
But yeah, then we have an aside, which is probably filler for time and to show off some Kit stuff. These guys kind of try to steal Kit while Michael's in a phone booth. It doesn't go too well for them because we get an ejector seat that comes complete with a slide whistle sound effect.
So with that, I was actually reading a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff, and it does say that the running gag about the two thieves trying to steal Kit was added last minute, because when they did the pilot, it ended up what they had first shot was apparently 7 minutes too short for what the network wanted. And they're like, oh, we gotta go. So they did fill it with this running gag of
that's what I figured.
Two guys are like, oh, we could steal it here in broad daylight. Oh, not right now. Let's wait till later. And then they see it later, also in broad daylight. And they're like, now is the time. So let's go ahead and do it now. So
gotcha. Yeah, that's why I kind of felt like, it could have been. That's filler stuff.
Right. And then, of course, when they're, like you said, it's a very cool way to feature the ejection seat, including the retractable T-tops there. But when they're ejected conveniently right onto the police car that's right in front of them, like the police officers look at them and they're like, well, clearly you did something bad. We're just going to arrest you. We're not even going to question this automated car that spit you out.
Yes,
be on your way. So it's all good. So
cool car, my man. Cool car.
Rock and roll.
But so Michael goes to doing his research, goes to or he goes back to where Pamela Susan Shoop works, this bar or whatever, and he kicks the shit out of some hillbillies. Put to the sounds of "Hit Me With Your Best Shot," but Michael goes kung fu.
Hey, surprise. Now, of all the good quality, like shot and like we were just praising them for like excellent editing and stunts and things like that. Yeah, this is where they really phoned it in. He's like, careful, guys, I know kung fu. And then you shoot. Then the next scene is like out the front door where guys are being tossed haphazardly. Like you don't see any kung fu.
I want to see David Hasselhoff kung fu in those jeans.
Yes.
I need to see those tight jeans be able to lift a high kick up.
That's right. Feathered hair flowing. And, absolutely.
Kung Fu master. So he goes to jail. And there's a prisoner played by Charles Napier. He was not credited. I don't think. I'm like,
I don't think so.
At this time, he is known. He's not like schlub Charles Napier. Like, granted, we're a couple years before First Blood Part 2, but he was known before that. Like, it was just kind of funny. Like, oh, random guy in jail played by Charles Napier. All right.
They needed a thug who could actually speak lines, because they have a pretty good back and forth between him and Hasselhoff there in the clink. So yeah, maybe he owed Larson a favor. I don't know. So
yeah, well, he does say to him at one time, like it's really weird. Michael says, like Michael's kind of ticked off and he goes, sit and spin. And I'm like, I wonder if they're inferring to him flipping him off, but they don't want to show it on TV, because normally there's people who go sit and spin. And I'm like, I'm wondering if that's what it's supposed to be referencing without showing it.
Could be.
You can flip off anybody now, but back here in 82, that probably would have been like, you can't have that on your show.
Sure.
I think this ran at probably, this would have been a 9 o'clock show, you think?
I imagine it probably
9 or 10.
Yeah, probably a later special presentation later in the evening. Yeah,
it's a little much for an 8 o'clock, but yeah, probably 9 or 10. And then the back at the evil headquarters, what was it called? Comtron. They're like, we need to find out what's in that car. So they're like having guys work all over it, and they want to grill Michael about it, but Kid escapes on his own. He like,
of course he does. He's Kid. He's wonderful. So yeah, they talked about how they're like, oh, like we've gone through 3 diamond bit drills and we can't penetrate the surface. And again, it's a lot of this all talk, not showing, because
Mhm.
it's it's impossible to show a Trans Am surviving that stuff. But then Kit's like, okay, well, I'm indestructible, so when no one's looking, he literally just busts out the front door because he knows he's not going to get a scratch on him. So just
Right.
right out the front door, and he's off on his business. So
Yeah, and then there's a funny line that it's kind of a very self-aware line I liked when he's with Charles Napier in the prison, because Charles Napier is one of the guys that works for this Comtron company, and he's like, "You ever wonder why a nice, polite electronics company needs strong arm boys?" Like, I was like, "It's pretty good."
yeah,
But the bad guys decides that they can't take Kit. They're like, "Well, we need to go get Michael out of jail." But Kit gets there first. He crashes through the wall, doesn't damage the car at all.
of course.
And then Michael does some stealth sleuthing going into Tanya's place, but he winds up getting like shot and like seriously hurt during that mission. But he's
It
like,
was a very interesting vibe. Like clearly, and so shot in the shoulder,
yeah,
it seems like a fairly serious injury. And
hmm
in later scenes, as he's progressing, sometimes it bothers him. He's got his arm with the red blood
right.
over it, and sometimes he's like, whatever, he's just running like normal, and it's not a big deal. So it's one of those
Comes and goes.
vague things, sure, until right, but it's relevant to the plot, because then
hmm
Kit's like, oh, Michael, you're fading fast, I don't know if you can drive, should I drive? And Michael at this point is still like, hell no, I drive myself, I'm red blood American, no car gonna drive me around. So it's a thinly veiled excuse to have Michael continue to slowly pass out and try to rely on Kit more, which I understand you have to progress that relationship somehow, I guess.
hmm So he like, there's like, all the bad guys are gonna get on this plane, and he needs to get to the airport. And he's like, if I'm going out, I'm gonna take them with me. Because Kit's like, dude, you're gonna die. We need to go to the hospital. And he's like, nope. So there's all sorts of stuff. We get a cool. There's a semi that tries to block them, and Kit smashes through it. And he evades like helicopter attacks during this. It gets nuts. Like here, get no budget, just do what you want.
It was
Helicopters,
amazing,
semi, like
right?
it's
And I mean,
insane.
they're really trying to hammer home how indestructible Kit is. Yeah, like, so when a semi just blocks the road and the semi driver's like, yeah, you ain't going anywhere, boy, he literally just plows through it. The Comtron semi that's apparently carrying boxes full of sawdust, who knew? But he plows right through them. Yeah, and then the helicopter shows up. They're shooting a machine gun out of the helicopter, or a
Yep.
rifle maybe, and it shoots and it pings off Kit right back to the
Oh yeah.
helicopter, and downs the helicopter. So yeah, they really went all in with hammering you over the head on how indestructible Kit is. Not only then he gets to the airport, goes on the runway, plays chicken with
hmm
the plane that's about to take off, slides underneath it and slices one of its wings off. I'm like,
Right.
you are all in on showing us how badass Kit. Like, we get it. Kit is an ultimate badass. Mission accomplished for sure. Like, if you wanted a hook to have people come back and watch
hmm
future episodes, you've done it. Like, mission accomplished.
and
Well
and,
done.
and in cool ways. It's not just like, oh, he
Yeah.
put an oil slick on the road. Oh, he
Right.
shot fire. Oh, he's got a gun. Like, it's cool. Like, it's cool tactical stuff and smart
Mhm.
driving that really is really helping it to like stand out. I'm sure we'll get some mailed in efforts, but 22 episodes every season, it's a lot. But there was a good line during this aircraft battle that I just, good cheesiness. Someone's like, let's get that aircraft rolling. And I think it was Phyllis. She goes, not till I finish night.
Right. Not till I finish night.
Not
And
till I
then the
finish
very
night.
next line is like, no, let's go. She's like, okay, okay, let's go.
But yeah, like
But she said what she wanted to say.
it catches fire. She goes up to the driver's window. And it's like, I'm gonna shoot Michael Knight, and it goes and it like ricochets
And
back
she-
and kills her. I'm like, you dumbass.
And like, he tries to, like, so earlier in the office, he was very like ready to kill her. He got her gun, he had it trained on her. He was like, some line about how, like, this isn't the Nevada desert, and that
Right.
triggers her to be like, Michael Long, gasp, you're
Yep.
alive. I mean, it was very chintzy, but yeah, somehow between then and now, he's decided to like try to help her, because
Right.
she goes to the window that he knows is indestructible. So like, he's like, again, trying not to pass out because of his shoulder wound. He goes, Tanya, no, and then she shoots, and it ricochets right back to herself. But before that, again, another great, amazing action piece with the no budget thing where the plane explodes and the bad guys are running away from the plane, including Tanya.
Yes.
The plane goes up in flames and they all fall to the ground. I'm like, that was badass and was not cheap. It can't have been cheap to have that massive explosion. So yeah, very, very cool vibe all throughout this episode. I was sold again on a rewatch. I was obviously sold as a kid. It's all good. So
I just realized both Tanya's shots at Michael Knight ricocheted.
That's right.
They didn't hit him.
Neither hit their mark or neither accomplished the mission. So
the closing sequence is Michael and Devon on a plane with basically Devon giving Michael the mission statement of the series for him out. They cheers and we head to the credits for the Knight Rider movie premiere, 2-part syndicated launch of the series. Which
we'll call it the movie premiere. I mean, they didn't start the official, like the actual credits with like the over narration and things like that until the second episode. Mm-hmm. This one's I would consider it a self-contained movie. So.
Oh yeah. And I have to say, like you said, I was very surprised at how entertaining and enjoyable this was going back. Like I wasn't expecting to be like, but I thought it would be more. I don't know, like it paced well. Like for some reason, this show paced really well in a bloated, movie form episode that it worked.
Yeah.
And
sometimes going back in those classic episodes, I don't want to disparage our former discussions on Quantum Leap, but that was one of those where I go back and I'm like, oh boy, some of this is really dragging. Like this is very dialogue heavy. Like I see.
It's a drama show too, so it's not going to crutch on I can't crutch on action sequences like a Knight Rider can. But there's some drag to it. And it not every episode's going to have the action budget this did. I think also, a lot of times, sometimes we have to talk about where, movies and stuff were better. A lot of times you can argue older films were better blockbuster wise because they only had, certain amounts of money. They could only do this much with action, that they had to focus on writing better in between character scenes and building character and making those as interesting as the action sequences they were forming around, which now you can do whatever you want. And, whatever's whatever. I still enjoy movies nowadays, but I'm just saying, in the argument of people saying why they like certain things better, that's one in their corner for that.
Agreed.
But okay, Tony, let's shift gears and look on toward the sunset before we hit the horizon. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can come hang out with me online. I do most of my freelance writing these days on sciencefiction.com, where I am the senior editor. So you can come read all the news and reviews over there. And you can find me on any of the social medias by simply searching the ever unique name, Tony Schaab.
Tony Schaab.
Yeah, the TonySchaab.com.
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD, written worker. Wait, let me try that again. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD, written work on whysoblue.com, which it looks like. So in one of my Tim Burton episodes, it probably said, hopefully future Brandon is reviewing the Sony Picture Classics 4K collection. It's being sent to me, so huzzah.
Nice.
Prophetic. It's a $209 box set. I didn't know if they'd be sending it out or not. It's quite expensive, but all mine. Very excited to dig into that. So that'll be up on White So Blue throughout the end of November and beginning of December, surely. The Tim Burton retrospective continues Monday, and we'll be right back here again next Monday for another Knight Rider adventure, but from old space.
Ooh, let me give you my best gritty Knight Rider narrator voice here. So, all right. Brandon and Tony, not so lone crusaders in a dangerous world. The world of Old Space Show.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.